So,
Awesome.
oh, give it a few seconds for everybody to pile on in here.
Yeah, I'll put it out on mine too right now. Let's see.
So, how's your weather in your area?
It's actually nice today. It's been weird though. I'm telling you, it's been like all over the board. It's been good and then bad. And and
Yeah.
then snow and then nice. Is that how you guys are?
Well, yesterday it was 78 degrees, and today is, well, right now I think it's 47,
Oh, wow.
46 degrees.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So kind of cold a little bit.
yeah, it up and down, and it's
Oh
raining,
boy.
still
Oh.
raining.
Oh no, not rain. Rain make
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay, I guess. Better than snow.
Oh yeah, tons better than snow.
Yes, for sure. Let's see. I'm gonna try to share this, but
So, why don't you go ahead and
okay.
introduce yourself and tell people about yourself, and
You
we'll go
bet.
from
We're
there.
ready. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Heidi Love. I'm from the Unfiltered Rise. I have Unfiltered Rise podcast, of course. I also do Spotify a lot, YouTube a lot. I'm kind of all over the place lately. I was a Mormon for 34 years, and I live in Utah, and I still am stuck here, kind of. Um, we have adult children, so they live here and we don't really want to leave and miss out. We've got a grandbaby due soon. And so we just kind of stay, but it's not exactly easy when you're an apostate. So we are parents. We have 6 kids total together, and they all are starting to have their people and babies and fun things. So that's a little bit about me, but I'm happy to be here.
That's good. Um,
Awesome.
what kind of stuff do you do on your channel?
Yes.
Types of podcast and whatnot.
Sure. We do everything from Mormonism and the occult. I have kind of a different thought process on it. It's more of my version of what I think probably happened with Joseph Smith in the original story. We describe a lot of that there. I also pretty much frequent conspiracy theories. A lot of times we'll break them down. We do Mormon Mondays on Paranoid Americans channel, and that's a fun one. We kind of go over some fun mayhem stories, like different things that we learn about different past people that were Mormons. So, fun fact: Ted Bundy was a Mormon. Yes. So some people, there was Charlie Chaplin. He had a driver that was a transvestite that was killed by a Mormon. I know.
Oh
You wouldn't
wow.
think. You wouldn't think it, but it's a thing. So I guess it's conspiratorial, but not because they're proved a lot of times. But I do delve into have guests on about flat earth. I have guests on about all kinds of fun stuff. Anything they want to tell me, I'm game. I think it's a fun time. So it depends. Sometimes I don't always align with every view that I have on, but I think it's fun to present all the ways that people think. So I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah. Tartaria, all the things. We go all over the place. But
Now before we got started, you were talking about how you got away from it and stuff. Do you want to
yes. Yeah,
touch on that?
absolutely. So I was born and raised in Mormonism, and I was able to kind of get help through my husband. That's my husband now, but he's my boyfriend then, and my mom. And she had gotten out and she became a Stevens minister. She was a Christian. And I remember thinking, well, she's just crazy because she'd never been through the temple. I'd been through the temple. And when you go through and you're a temple certified Mormon, you do all these weird rituals and some strange things. So you think you have the highest degree of knowledge of anybody else. You are smarter than everybody else, everything on this. So you kind of feel like anybody going a different direction, well, they're just lost. They're just crazy. They don't know anything. They don't know. And so I remember when my mom got out, I thought that of her. And if she hadn't planted little seeds and not given up on me, she did that for years, years. And I'm sure she never thought I would get out. It's a way of life here. Everyone surrounding me, like all my neighbors, everybody, they're all Mormon. And so it makes it a little difficult. But anyway, so she planted seeds. And then my husband, I met him and he said, look, I'm just going to tell you one thing. You need to go watch a couple things about Mormonism. So he showed me some temple ceremony stuff that wasn't Mormons. They were Masons. And I thought, oh my gosh, why is this on TV? This shouldn't be on here. This is sacred. This is secret. This is blah, blah, blah. And he goes, those are Masons. They're not Mormons. That just looks the same because they do the same stuff. And I remember being blown absolutely away. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And so that opened up a little tiny, it was like a tiny little hole to say, well, maybe I need to look at this, and I was like, okay, I'll try this out. I'll try to look into things. And I remember I went to church with my mom and I remember thinking, this is so weird because I don't know if have you ever been to a Mormon church?
No.
Okay. So it's very quiet. It's very, everybody's, there's no singing and dancing and, big band, things like all that. And they had all that. And I remember my grandma calling it, my mom's church, the rock and roll Jesus church, because they played electric guitar. It really wasn't that intense, but like even that was so, whoa, And I remember being there and thinking, well, I don't feel the spirit the same. This isn't good, blah, blah, blah. And then as soon as I tried to relax, I had gone a couple times and finally let go and actually feel like the feelings, right? Like of worship, real worship, right? And it says that this is how it was with Jesus. Like they would go out and they would, be on a mountainside and be worshiping and loud. And I don't think they were quiet, and that kept playing in my mind. Like maybe they know something I don't know. Maybe I got to check this out. So I did. And I finally accepted Jesus and went down to the front and just bawled because the one thing that I didn't understand was grace, because Mormons don't have free grace. Mormons are works-based. They're very works-based. And what they say is like, if you have 40 cents or 50 cents, Jesus will make up the other 50, but you got to do everything you can to get all the pennies, as many as you can, and then you start reading the Bible later and it's like, it's dirty rags. I didn't understand because we do use the Holy Bible in the Mormon church, but we don't read it. And if it has anything that, doesn't correlate with the Book of Mormon, they'll say, oh, it's only good as in it's translated correctly. So it must not be translated correctly. Yeah. So it was nice to be able to just read the Bible and see what it had to say and see what spoke to me. And then I knew what was in the Book of Mormon. They study it so much. I mean, that was all you study. Joseph Smith, I think they study him more than Jesus, to be honest.
Yeah. That's where I always differed when I didn't understand why, and nothing against Catholics or anything, but they worship the saints and everything. It's okay to recognize them and everything, but I don't see why
there's like no man between you and God. There's not supposed to be. No angel, no statue, none of that. And somebody coming out of something like that, like knowing now what I know now, like these Masonic things are not helping me get to heaven. These silly things they make you do are not getting you to heaven. This and that are not going to get you to heaven, but that's what they tell you. And so you believe them, and my great grandma went, my grandma went, like we're Mormon settlers on my DNA, like, cause I'm in Utah. And I can't get rid of it. Like, it's like, ugh, it's there. And it was oppressive for a while. Like I was telling you, I got saved. And then I almost feel like it went really negatively for a good solid year. Like, and I couldn't figure out. Yeah, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, okay, what? then I started studying. I don't know if you're affiliated with anybody in particular, but Derek Prince. Do you know who Derek Prince is? He's
No,
an older pastor. He's passed away now, but I think he was Pentecostal, if I remember correctly. But either way, it didn't matter what he was as far as that goes. I just really liked his sermons, and he talks a lot about grace and all these things. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he talks about deliverance. Well, that's a taboo subject in a lot of churches, you know. So I started learning, like, maybe the stuff you did in the temple, maybe that has some negative connotation to it. Maybe you ought to research into this a little bit further and find out exactly what you've saddled yourself with and saddled your family with. And yeah, so I started doing that and started really deep diving, like, oh gosh, like Masonic oaths, you know, all these things.
there's a
Let's see.
question for you.
Gotcha. Seeing
Have you ever heard
Cain.
stories regarding Joseph Smith seeing Cain, possible Bigfoot?
I know this about Joseph. Joseph Smith saw 26 different apparitions and or dead people, including John the Baptist, and I believe Cain was mentioned as well. So they always just focus on the one angel, and that was Angel Moroni. And I always say I left occult Mormonism, and if I write, I likely will write a book. But the occult side of that church is so strange to me that now that I see it, right? Like when you're in it, it's like you're wearing a mask or something on your eyes. I don't know, and your
Yeah.
ears too, I guess. So yes, he saw a whole bunch of deceased people, deceased angels, his deceased family. Like they don't mention this because it sounds exactly, they don't want you to hear that. Like that sounds crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And it's true. And he says that. And so, you know, you get digging down that rabbit hole, and then you start to understand almost everything you were told is completely changed. Either they Mandela affected us or something, because when I was little, there was Kolob, which was a planet that you went to and got your own, you know, family, you made your own world and all this crazy stuff. And then you also learned about that. You also learned that he used the Urim and Thummim, which resembles like a Hebrew breastplate that they use for things that are very like it's like a Jewish Kabbalah type thing almost. And so anyways, they use that and these spectacles when I was young to translate the Bible or the Book of Mormon. And then later somehow there was a rock and a hat, and I'm going, what dimension is this in? Because now the prophet he takes this hat out this last year, and I think everybody my age probably went, what is happening? There was no hat. We would have laughed. I remember when South Park came out, which by the way, that little skit they did is kind of right on. It's actually true. Everything they say in that skit is true. Which is probably why it got banned. Yeah. But it's just the truth. And I looked back at that, and I remember when some things came out, and I thought, oh, they don't know any. Look at how dumb they are. They don't know anything. No, they knew some stuff. And
Yeah.
so hard lesson to learn off of South Park. But when you're
When
talking
you're,
pulling things out of a magic hat, you sound pretty occultish to me.
yeah. When
Uh,
you say your mom's the one that kind of planted some seeds and stuff, how
yes.
how did she get out?
I think she was just smarter and braver than most of us. I think she was lucky. I don't know exactly what led her out, but I'm grateful because it really helped me. I mean, later on, obviously, you know, she was out far before me, but I just couldn't believe like that she would even leave. Like this was a travesty to me, you know,
Yeah.
back in the day. And now I'm like, wow, you know, and she got out, and she had been out for years. And then all of a sudden, like I said, I met my husband, and he had left it. Like he comes from a devout family. And they still are, you know. And he said, when I was like 16, they quit making me go. So I just thought it was a load of crap. And I'm like, man, you were smarter than I was, you know? And so he left and he said, I'll never go. And so he's considered still savable to his family because he didn't have the full knowledge. He didn't go to the temple and he didn't receive the full knowledge. And so, like, even people that are like Catholic or something else or whatever, they don't think those people are bad too much. I mean, they say, oh, they don't know. They just don't know. But if you know, like me, I had a full, what they say is the full knowledge because I went to the temple for all the Masonic rites and everything. And I'm like, okay, now they consider me going to hell and that I will be with murderers and apostates in outer darkness, which is similar to purgatory for Catholics. So I'm considered doomed. And so when he met me and his family heard that I was an apostate, that wasn't fun. So like I said, he had kind of been smarter than me and he's out too, but he was left kind of harmless with it because, like, well, he just didn't know. He just wasn't wise enough to go through. You know, he didn't know what we know. He's still salvageable, but not me. And so he helped me and my mom helped me. And eventually, like I said, I came through it and went, oh, okay, you know, that makes sense. But even then, I would say for a full year, I was a lukewarm baby Christian. Wasn't reading. I wasn't trying to figure things out. I just was like raising my family, doing my own thing kind of. And I just one day thought, okay, well, you know, I need to look at this more. And I did a little, and then something really tragic happened to me in 2020. My daughter estranged from the family, my oldest daughter, and I was very close with her. And she met a guy. He didn't like us. He met us a couple times. That was it. He just wanted us out of the way, take her clear across the country, leave them alone. And it just rocked me. Out of all the horrible things I've had happen to me, that one was the word. I just couldn't get over it. Cause like I'd had all these deaths in my family and all this horrible stuff, but like, that's not their choice. They don't leave you on purpose. Like they're, you know, it's different. So that got me close to the Lord because I started really reading the word because I was so depressed. I had all these other kids, you know, that was my oldest one. So I had to pull it together somehow, but also nothing was working. So I started those Derek Prince videos and I did a lot of just studying in the scriptures, study the scriptures and journal, study the scriptures and journal, praying. And it finally helped me to a point where I was like, oh, okay, I can, I'm going to be okay. You know, like maybe, I mean, it's still not fun. It's been 5 years. But I got really into podcasts and I started listening to them all the time because I love Josh Monday, Christian Conspiracy Podcast. And I really liked his stuff. And I thought, I'm going to send him a message about this school that's by me because it had some weirdo satanic stuff on the walls. And I thought, this is a public school and this shouldn't be there. And as a Christian guy, I'm just going to send him the message, right? Because I don't know how to do anything like that. So here you go. Have fun. Go check this out. Bye. That's what I said. And he said, hold on a minute. I don't know anything about your area or Mormons or anything. And so maybe you could come on. And I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's insane. Like he's crazy person. I'm not coming on a show. Like I'm a mom and I'm a nurse. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like what?
That's how it starts.
Yeah, I didn't know. I had no clue. And he said, please just come on and tell me about this school. Cause you sent I sent him all these pictures and he said, they are crazy. Like you need to come explain this. Cause there was like devil dogs and everything doing bad stuff, doggy stuff. Yeah. Like, and it wasn't just one thing. It was 3 rows of pictures about 6 inches apart through the whole school of just these weird Buddhas and devil dogs and like Salvador Dali paintings and just really morbidy type stuff that was weird. And I thought, what is going on with this school? But also they filmed High School Musical there with Disney. Really? So there's another little, right? I said I love a great conspiracy. So I was
Yeah.
like, you better check this out. And he said, okay, come on. So I was so scared to death. He finally talked me into it. And I thought, I don't know. I had my phone and my son's puzzle light, and I was such a dork. Like, I was so scared. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what to do. And he said, just tell me what you told me on the call, and that's all, whatever. So okay. And then he goes, you mentioned you're a Mormon. And I said, yeah. And I said, I was one. He goes, you got to come back and tell us about Mormons. And I said, okay, well, everybody knows. And he goes, no, you where you are, they probably do, because you live in Utah, but nobody really knows this stuff. And I thought, okay, that's kind of weird, but whatever. So I came on. I thought, well, nobody's going to listen to me. I'm just a dumb housewife. Like, not dumb, but, like, I wasn't like some studious person. What I mean by that, I wasn't learned or anything and all that. I'm just, like I said, I am as a nurse, but like, I didn't feel like I had qualifications to go on a podcast. And so I told him my story, and a bunch of people started just flooding him with like, have her back and tell more and blah, blah, blah. So I came back with like number 3. And he said, I could just keep doing this with you, but honestly, you probably could just start your own podcast. Like, people really do want to hear what you have to say,
Yeah.
And I honestly couldn't believe it. I remember praying to God. This is kind of funny because this is what happens. See, I remember praying to God and saying, like, okay, God, now that I know you're real, like actually real, like you can use me, and I'll be, you got to be really careful with that. You might end up on a podcast. Just kidding. It was good. And God used me, and I couldn't believe it because I was like, nobody's going to care. Like, this is so weird to me. Why do you want me to come on, tell this story? And now lots of people have heard my story. I've been on tons of podcasts. I've got my own podcast. We go through all this and more, way more on there. I've had on like L.A. Marzulli. I've had on Ryan Pitterson, just Gary Wayne, different people to help, spread the word, which is the whole point for me. Because if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't even do this. Right? It's like your soul is bare, kind of, and that's okay. If it helps people, like, I really feel like then that's the point. We're all supposed to be family. So
yeah, you never know who's going to be listening one day. And it's YouTube, so it can be just pop it in somebody's feed for some reason, and they click on it.
You never know. And that's the thing. I think it's so, and I know you do prepping stuff. And I will say this about the Mormons. Now, not all that they do is bad, because they are preppers. They are hugely into food storage. They are hugely into like have 2 years of everything and all this to sustain each person. Like, they really do push that whole thing. And I do think there's some good things that come out of it. Like, not the religion, how it started, all that stuff isn't great, but like some of their things that they do, like they have great family values. They have great, like most of these people at the bottom, like I mean, I went to the temple and all that, but most of the normal Mormons, like my husband's family, they don't know this stuff. They don't know the weirdest stuff at the top. Like, there's no way, I certainly did not until I got out. And then I went, wow, maybe I need to pay attention. But you don't, because it's more of a legacy than a religion for most of us,
Yeah. The one person that I did know that actually went back into the community because her parents were still in it, and she was allowed to go. I'll say the mother wanted to see her, the father didn't. And when she would go in, if somebody seen her, they would turn their backs.
It can be really bad.
I felt so bad for that person to have to go walking through whatever community it was and go to see her mother. And
she sounds like a fundamentalist.
Turn their backs, and like, wow.
Was she from a polygamous sect? Do you
I
know?
have no idea.
So the
All I knew is
fundamentalists are very serious about that.
yeah, all
They
I
are the
knew is
polygamy.
she was a Mormon, and she got out, and she, like I said, she went back to see her mother. Her father didn't want to see her, but she still tried to see him. And I thought that was even worse, that, you know, your own family
Hmm.
don't want to see you. That's, oh,
Yeah, when
that's
I
got to be
got
rough.
out, um, and I sound like I was in prison, but I feel like that sort of when I got out. But I got sued by my grandmother. My grandmother had been extremely close to me all of my life, and she helped raise me. And I was a ward of the court at 12, and she really was my mom for a lot of my younger part of my life, and from 12-ish up. And she kept every receipt for any little thing she ever did for me and my kids. So like school clothes or a trip to Disneyland or any little thing. And she used all of those against me when I stopped going to church and I told her I was going to leave the church. She came after me brutally. She not only sued me, she told my whole family that I was a thief. She told the judge that
Oh,
I
wow.
stole that money from her. She also called CPS on me. She tried to have my children removed from me because I was playing anti-Mormon propaganda. Um, it was brutal. I lost most of my family members that were like further away, like cousins and aunts and uncles and that kind of stuff, not like the immediate, over that situation because they didn't know the truth. And then she died. So the truth will never be told because she's gone. It looks
Yeah.
like I did something bad to this old woman. She won the court case because she had receipts. So I don't even know what you do with that, and it just was horrible. That was all happening right as I exited. And it was almost surreal. It was like God really did go, you know what? You said you'd be like Job. Really? Will you? And I really felt that for some time. Like I ended up living in my brother's basement with 6 kids. Like it was just surreal. And everything that could have gone wrong did for a while, including my health. And I had cancer and it was something. And then, losing my daughter. I mean, she's not dead, but she got married. I didn't get to go. I got an invite to not come, a
Oh,
disinvite, right? Um, I got a granddaughter I've never seen. Um, I see pictures here and there, but like not very consistently. And it depends on if a family member even wants to show me because they don't want in the middle of it. That had nothing to do with Mormonism, but it was truly heartbreaking. It was almost enough to bring you backward. Like, okay, just stop attacking me,
yeah.
like maybe, maybe I should go back. Like, and people treat you bad, like even my neighbors, like a lot of my neighbors don't allow my daughter to play with them, their kids, all these things. Like this isn't a comfortable place to be as an ex-Mormon. And so it's like, well, okay. And my in-laws, they're nice enough, but they're not very happy that we're together, because of this stuff. Like it's widely felt. If we were Jack Mormons, a Jack Mormon is kind of like the Catholics that go twice a year, that don't obey the rest of the rules because there's a lot of Mormon rules. There's some rules. Um, but they don't have to do all that or whatever. Even they are considered better. You could be a good Christian person living like as best as you can to please the Lord, or you could be this Jack Mormon, and people would rather you be this Jack Mormon that drinks and smokes and cusses and does whatever and lies and cheats and steals and whatever it is.
Mhm.
And that's a better off person than me because I'm doomed for all eternity, right? Like that's
Yeah.
rough. That's a little bit rough.
And that's that girl was almost pulled back in because she didn't want to
Mhm.
be, she still wanted to be with her, close to her mother. Um, and this was in Arizona, northeast Arizona. They had a place there for for Mormons to get away. I
Mhm.
forget what they called it, but they had a home and everything set up for people to come in and almost get desensitized, I guess it would be.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
Because
hard to come out. Yeah.
yeah,
If they're living in a commune type situation, highly likely they would have been in. So Colorado City, Arizona is down in the southern part of Utah, Arizona border, and they
mhm,
are the fundamentalist Mormons. So fundamentalist Mormons are even more strict than regular Mormons because they live the laws of polygamy. They wear the clothes like all the way down and all the way to the ankles, and they wear dresses, and they kind of look
yeah,
like Little House on the Prairie in a way, you
yeah.
know. And my brother-in-law is actually, do you know who Warren Jeffs is? He's like the guy over the fundamentalists. He got arrested and he's in prison for child rape because
Oh,
of this. Because he married underage girls. And it was proven and he got in big trouble, but he still runs it. It's kind of like the mafia, you know, they do what they want. I mean,
yeah.
but my brother-in-law was high up in that family and he got out and he's told me a lot of times like you have no idea cuz he came home, he barely said anything to Warren Jeffs, which was his uncle. He said something about some small thing and he said, but it's not like I couldn't talk to him, he's my uncle. It's not like I was just one of the workers or a friend. And he said, I just said it like nonchalantly. And the next thing I knew, I was shipped back to the main area. And when I got home, my wives were gone, my kids were gone, everyone was relocated, and they kicked me out because they
Wow.
can. And they own the you might build the house, but they own the land. And so you don't get a say
Mhm.
if you don't do what they say. So, and he never got his kids back. So they were pretty little at that point. He didn't see him for 4 years. Then they ended up on TV because they were at that Texas raid that happened with the fundamentalist Mormons in the New Zion. And somebody called him and said, I just seen your kids and they were on TV.
Oh, wow.
And so he said, oh, and they said, you better get down there because they took all those kids away and they're in CPS custody. They're going to give them back to the state, like foster kids situation. So he flew down there to get his kids and they wouldn't give them to him because he was related to the main guy. So they were like, no. And he
Oh,
said, look, I got kicked out years ago. Like, I want my kids back. And he said, I got to see my kids for like 3 hours. And I just hysterically bawled. And so did they because I just knew they weren't going to give him back to me. And they gave him back to the mom instead. And he didn't see him for another 8 years. And the daughter's
that's a
still in.
shame.
Yep, the daughter's still in it. They don't let the females go. The females are they're like cattle. Like they trade them. Like I said, they relocated his wives, but when I say that, I mean they got new husband for her.
Oh, wow.
And they split up the families and they give the kids to a new dad and they say, this is your dad now. And like you said, the girl that they turn their backs, that's what they do. Outsiders are not welcome. He was not welcome. Those kids even were trained that he's a bad person now because he's out. So, like, I don't know how you come back from that. That's just, and he still lives with that. He's a mainstream Mormon to this day, which I tried to talk to him a little bit about and just shouting this out for him because his story is really hard and fundamentalist Mormons don't speak out. They rarely will you ever see anything about an ex-polygamous Mormon because they come after them so bad. And his name is Isaac and his book is called Isaac's Story and it is on Amazon. And so,
Mm,
yeah, that
that's a
story's
shame.
yeah.
I bet you there's hundreds of stories like that too.
Oh, absolutely. And they get rid of the teenage boys early because they don't want the competition. See?
Oh boy.
Mhm. They're called, so there's a couple things that I would recommend people that are curious, if you're curious to watch, is, Under the Banner of Heaven, which is a true story about the Lafferty murders. that happened here in Utah, but it reenacts certain scenes that are pretty critical, like in the temple and different things that explain a lot if you want to kind of have a small grasp. And Stay Sweet is a documentary about Warren Jeffs, and that's on, I believe it's on Netflix. And so those are amazing to kind of get the grasp of what we're talking about here, because it's weird. And you're not wrong. It happens a lot. Yeah. So,
yeah. And that kind of and I don't know how familiar it is or close to the same as the Hollywood religion thing that they got going on.
Scientology, so similar.
Yeah. Some of the stories you hear out of that, oh man. And it's like a normal thing because it's Hollywood, you know?
Yeah. Well, and look at Tom Cruise. He forsook his only daughter, his only posterity, and he has not seen her in over a decade because of their rules. Because you cannot be around somebody that's not in, kind of like the whole shunning thing.
Yeah.
But to a more extent, they can't even be around somebody. That's his own daughter. She didn't do anything. She was a little kid, you know?
Yeah.
They don't care.
I don't see how a father could sit there and
I could never.
Well, there are bad fathers, but if you loved your kid, you wanted to see him, not be able to see your kid, and somebody oh, you can't do that.
I know how that feels, because that's how I'm going through with my daughter, and her husband literally says it's him. And part of me wants to fight, but she's an adult, you know, it's a different. But no matter what, you know, 28 or not, that's my kid, you know. And I have to pray about it constantly, because the human part of me wants to say, well, you know what? I'm just going to go fly right down there and go show up at their door. And, you know, like, and then I pray, and God's like, no, you're not going to do that, because the prodigal son has to come home on its own. There's nothing I can say or do. We tried that for a year. For a full year, I begged and pleaded and cried, and how could you do this? And why would you do this? And please talk to me, and all the things, and I'll do anything, and let's go to therapy. I mean, anything that you can think of, I did that, you know, like, you want me to say sorry? You want me to be humiliated? Cool. Let's do that. Like, I don't care, you know, because as a parent, you just kind of lose that. Like, I don't care if they wanted me to go get some lashings in front of a bunch of people at this point, I'd probably do it, you know, I mean, yeah, but I also realize in that whole thing where she's an adult, this is her choice too. And that's sucky. You know, you have to step back and go, if I did all those weird things, like showed up at her door and made her even more uncomfortable than she already is, and then I just show I am the psycho they say I am, right? Like, it just seems more crazy. So it's like, I want her to come home. I hope she sees these podcasts. I hope she hears me. You know, it'll be just like the prodigal son. Like, I'm not going to be upset. I just want my daughter back, you know, not to have, like, just to see her. Like, I'm not going to try and take her from her marriage or
have a relationship.
Yes. Yeah. And it's hard, because as a mom, you want to, you know, we were almost too close, and I realize that now. And part of me thinks, well, maybe you made her a little bit of your idol. And this is where God really came in. Like, he kind of knocked me down a little bit and said, who are you putting first in your life? Is it me? And I couldn't say yes. You know, I knew it wasn't. Is it your husband next? Well, not so much. You know, like, I knew that wasn't right either. Like, all these things, you know, aren't right, but like, you usually don't have to face that. Like, you can maneuver it or whatever, but like, everything came crashing down, and I did have to face it. I did have to say, yeah, no, I'm not doing that right, you know. And sometimes we get that lesson, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's gradual, sometimes, you know, whatever. But mine was just really abrupt, and I just had to step back and go, okay, God, like, I got this all messed up because I'm trying to do this by myself. Right? That's not gonna work. I think that's a Mormon in you. You think you can get to heaven all alone. Oh, geez. It's not fun. It's not a fun journey, but I do see a lot of people going through child estrangement right now, which is weird. It's kind of like a new thing. It's like I see these reels on Instagram or TikTok or this or that. Oh, there was like one where the guy pretended to be the dad and the son, it's a TikTok, supposed to give this message, and the dad, the toxic, this is their new phraseology. The toxic dad is saying, just wait till you have kids and see what happens. That's as toxic as he was. That was it. And then the son being like, yeah, well, you're toxic. And I'm like, what? That's, I mean, I was so confused because our parents were not this way. I'm almost 50. Our parents were different with us. They were like, you should be seen and not heard. You should be lucky to live here. You should, all these things. This is my house, not your house. What the heck? Whatever. And you can't fault them because how were their parents treated? Like, it's a generational thing.
Yeah.
And so if you have understanding in your life and you do have Jesus, then you have enough love in your heart to say, well, I'm going to have grace for that person because maybe that's how they were raised, right? Like maybe this is how they did things, or maybe that's how they did that. Like when you see somebody like a guy with like crazy blue hair and stuff, like that just wasn't a thing. Okay. That if my grandpa saw that, he'd have heart failure, like
Oh yeah.
he would. Yeah, it's not a thing, but we've had to evolve, and I get that. But also, like, it's shocking almost, to us, to our age group. And then these young kids are like, well, you're a bad person. I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah. I remember because when I was a teenager, and because I had really long hair, everybody,
Yep.
he's
The
that
old hippie. Yeah.
Yeah. And my kids, one of them dyed his hair red and had a mohawk. Of course, he had to change it because your football rules, you can't have
Right.
certain kind of hair. But I didn't see nothing wrong with it. It's just that little phase.
Yeah.
My other
Phases.
son
Yep.
did the oh, I don't know. It looks like they pulled their head out of a camel's butt or something. Their hair goes all in their face.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that.
I know what you're talking about. Uh-huh. That's
And
funny.
he outgrew that.
You're always happy when they know, huh?
Yeah.
But I mean, I get it. Like, I get that, like, they should be able to be self-expressive or whatever, but it's still it's no less shocking, right? It's not. And we've had some things in our own family that I'm like, oh wow, we didn't know we'd have to deal with this. Like my daughter, and then my other daughter is gay, and that was a really big one because we didn't know how quite to handle that as Christians, but also she's a grown up. And so you kind of just have to go, okay, we love you anyway, because we aren't going to lose any kids over any choices that they make. And at an adult's age, that is between them and the Lord. But we did let her know that, because that's all we can do. What else can you do? I'm not going to cut my kid off. That's for sure. No way. I know how that feels. That was reverse done to me, and that sucks. I'm not doing that to anybody ever again. And so,
and you see that a lot,
yeah.
You don't, and that's not up to you to decide if they're going to heaven or hell. That's only one person's.
Them and the Lord. Yep.
Yep.
And you have to let that go enough and it's hard. I'm not going to tell you we were shook, a little bit shocked, because she was our girliest one. She was always in pink, and she's the dancer girl, and she was actually the captain of the dance team. And then that came out, and we just thought, are you sure? Like, we were really, and I just told my husband, I said, look, if you push back and say, no, you're not, or this or that, or freak out or whatever, she's going to freak out back at you. And then I'd already lost my daughter. This is his daughter. And I said, all I know is nothing. There's nothing worth losing her. like, because I go through this, you know, and
Yeah.
he wasn't at that level anyway. I was just trying to pre-game it because I was worried, but actually he's way better at things than I am that way. He said, I would never do that.
And
He's
that's
a
the
good
thing.
guy.
You, I'll see a parent, um, you know, that one of their kids are gay or whatever, and they disown them. You and
Yeah,
kick them
no
out.
way.
You can't.
Yep.
And I'm like, you before they told you you love that kid. Now
Hmm.
all of a sudden you don't love them anymore,
No
and
way.
it irritates me when they use religion to do it.
Right. Because what if your kid turned around and said, well, you lied yesterday, so I'm never going to talk to you again because God says all sin's the same.
Yeah.
So we can't judge because that's the whole thing. Like, you better not. I don't want to be in a position where I ever get called back on it. Right. Like, why? For what? Is it going to change anything? Is your silence and absence going to fix it? That doesn't fix anything. That fixes
Mhm.
zero. You're not working through a problem. You're not, I understand if people are being in a harmful situation, like say you're being beaten, because I had like a really hard childhood and I don't talk to my stepdad because of that. But like, even with my real dad went to prison by the time I was like 10 or 11. And that's why I ended up with my grandma. But like all these people that were pretty hard in my life, like all my uncles were bikers and they were all like one percenters and like wild. There was some wild stuff going on, you know? And here's the thing. I knew them on a different level because they were my family and they were so good to me. Were they good to other people? Probably not. I don't need to know all that. Okay. Like that's a whole nother level of we don't want to go there because they're passed away because you ride like that in life, you're going to die fast too. Ride fast, die fast. It's not good. But here's the thing. I would have missed out on all of that. I would have missed out on some wonderful memories. Like my dad and me rekindled after he got out of prison. My children's relationship with my dad was amazing. And they talk about him to this day and how much they miss him and how much they loved him and how good he was to them. And he didn't do anything to me anyways. Like it wasn't a thing about that. And so like, if I hadn't forgiven, I guess, or like gotten over it, there was nothing to forgive, I guess, gotten over it or accepted him for whatever had happened. And he knew what he did was wrong. I mean, it didn't exactly stop because even after he died, there was a Ponzi scheme that came back, and we were like, he's gone though, and they were like, yep, we're the IRS, and we still get our money. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Sure
and it
do.
is what it is. Yeah, you can't do anything, but like, were his sins so great that he didn't deserve any part of me or my family? That's horrible. Like, no, no, and he would have
Mhm.
he was a blessing to my family and my children. So when we look at things, we have to use more Jesus and less judgment. And I think we'd all be a lot more happy,
Oh, yeah.
because I
Yep.
just think that's lost on people. People are really quick to do the cutoff now. I'm a psych nurse,
Oh, yeah.
just a little background. So I've been in psych nursing for about 8 years now, and I've been a nurse for 25, but for most of my career, I was like a regular, like ER nurse or whatever. Like I did labor and delivery. That's not for me. If the end of the world comes and I have to trade that skill for a sheep or something, I can do that, but it's not something I want to do. But I can help people, and so long story short, after my brother died tragically at 37 of an accidental overdose, um, I decided, okay, I missed it with him. There's nothing I can do there, but I can maybe try and help these people, people like him. And I changed my whole trajectory of nursing. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I could help people. I'll tell you, it's powerful because a lot of times they'll say to me, because I work with addicts coming directly off drugs and everything, like we're their first stop and they're detoxing or whatever. And they'll say, this sucks. I hate it here. And blah, 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 blah. And I'll just sometimes look at them and I'll say, well, my brother didn't get a chance to be at a place like this. And they're like, oh, your brother was an addict? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, where is he? I'm like, well, he's dead. And I'm sorry, that's a little more powerful to that person from somebody that's gone through that. And I tell them, you know what? That ruined half of my family's lives. Like, you might not think your life means a whole lot, but I'll tell you what, you mean a lot more than you may realize,
Yeah.
because it ruined a lot for his daughter. His ex-wife ended up, because I think she probably still loved him. And she had so much sadness that she ended her life shortly after that. My niece is now an orphan. Like, this pain is just consistently passed down from generation to generation. And meanwhile, my mom is just destroyed. I mean, I don't even think she could function for 2 years. Like, it never goes away. And I try to tell people, you may think you aren't important, or like your family doesn't love you, or that you're a burden. I can tell you that's just not true. That's not true. You have a problem, and that's how it needs to be dealt with, as a problem. That's not who you are. That's what you have. You got a problem,
Yeah.
So I always try and look at things that way. And that's why I called my podcast The Unfiltered Rise, because I'm very unfiltered. I try to behave, but sometimes my mouth says things I shouldn't, but that's okay. And rise is rise above your situation, because you are not where you're at. You're really not. You can come above it. You really can. And through this little bit of time, I've told you like at least 10 things that are just devastating, that could have maybe landed most people on a corner selling drugs somewhere and never coming back. Like, a lot of people don't make it through one of those things, let alone multiple things.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, we got to get rid of that victim mentality. I'm not saying smile through it, like that weird whatever movement where they're like, oh, it doesn't hurt really. And I'm like, yes, it does. Stop that. That's weird. Not that. I'm saying work through the issue and see who, now you have this knowledge, and here's what we're supposed to do as a family. Now you can help somebody else. Go do that. And then I told God
to help others.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, so much. I even told God, I said, I don't know anybody, so I can't help anybody. And then I became a podcaster on accident. So that's what will happen. Yep, God will find a way for you to get, if you really want to help people and you're like, God, I will help people, and you're like, I don't know anybody, he'll figure it out for you. Don't worry about that.
Okay, we're at the end of the show here. So do you got anything coming up that you would like to let everybody know?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Again, I'm at the Unfiltered Rise. I'm everywhere podcasts are served. I am definitely a mix and match of lots of fun things. But I do have a Patreon, Patreon/Unfiltered Rise. And that one, we do 2 to 3 extra shows a month, specifically about murder, mayhem, and Mormons, like the Charlie Chaplin thing I told you, or Ted Bundy. We've covered Ted. We're going to cover the Lafferty murders at some point. Mark Hoffman, all these different guys that were in the Mormon church, that, and the guy I do it with is kind of funny because he got out of the church, but he's an atheist and I'm a very Christian based. So we have like both ends of the dichotomy. So it's kind of fun, but
that's good. And you were also saying that you dab into cryptics and
yes,
whatnot.
cryptids. I'm often on shows like for cryptids because I've just had such a weird life, which makes me perfect for a podcast. But I've had some actually weird kind of paranormally type stuff happen to me regarding my daughter, which is a whole rabbit hole we won't open because it's too big, but and like different weird things that were attached with that and demonic stuff. And I really focus not just on Mormonism, but on the occult part of Mormonism. So if you want to know why I think that and how I came to that. It's not out of my own mind. These are out of like books, and he was very focused on magic and masonry. So I go deep into that as well. So yes, thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your story and everything. And if oh, we got a Bigfoot in here.
Uh-oh. Did someone say cryptid? Yes, I dive into the Nephilim quite often. The Nephilim is a big one that I do. So that's a lot of times where I land on that. And then they have me on because I talk about different things, including the orphan trains, cabbage babies, some weird stuff that World's Fairs.
Oh, I think I've seen that on your channel somewhere.
Yeah. It's all based in like real facts, like not just I think this because it's fun. Like I think this because ABCD. So I try to keep it centered, but I love anything about cryptids as well. So I kind of think they might be a breed of Nephilim, but that's okay.
But yes, thank you for coming up here, and I was hoping you would show up. I've been having issues here lately, but
no, I was excited to be here.
Yeah. Make sure if anybody wants to go check out our channel, it's pinned at the top of the chat, and it's also should be in the description too.
Awesome.
But I'm go ahead and end it here and
perfect.
Put a outro here, and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome.